Okay, good morning, English class. It is Thursday, October 29th. We are getting close to the end of week 3, where we have been looking at the fascinating world of fictional podcasts with Limetown, a dystopian science fiction piece, as an example. What you should have done up to this point is worked through the hyperdoc, all of the activities Monday through Wednesday, to keep yourself on track, to keep yourself paced according to how your teachers have paced everything out for you, so you're not trying to do 10 hours of work on Friday. I'm starting to sound like a broken record. I'm saying that every day, but I'm concerned that about the large number of incomplete assignments that I saw last week. Grades were updated last night, and messages did go out to parents and guardians regarding failing grades. It might feel really early for that, but it is my very, very firm belief that we have to stay on top of these things in order to not let things snowball out of control. So that being said, let's take a look at what we are doing today. So I am going directly to Thursday in our week 3 lesson hyperdoc. So up to this point, you should have listened to episodes 1 through 3 of Limetown. So that would, be the intro episode that we listened to, 2 of the days out of class this week. The Winona episode that we listened to parts of yesterday. You were to listen to the Napoleon episode yesterday. And today, what you'll be doing on your own is listening to episode 4 and the central question, and it gives you the times that it'll take you to listen to those. You also have access to the transcripts here and here. What you'll be doing today is a dialectical journal as you are listening, looking at quotes from the episode. How does this quote add meaning to the storyline? How does this quote shift the direction of the plot? How does this quote impact the mood of the episode? And then providing analysis for each of the quotes. Now, I do want to encourage everyone to please go and take a look at any comments I may have left for you in the hyperdoc from last week. The comments that I did write quite often were in the writing section, where the evidence may not have been the most effective piece of evidence, or the analysis just wasn't deep enough, that in order to get those full points and to really hone your skills, you want to dig deep into that evidence and pull something interesting out about it that you can comment on. So you'll be working on that with those episodes. We've also given you links to episodes 5 and episode 6 so that you can experience the entirety of Limetown. Now, the big thing for today and tomorrow, though, is that you are actually going to be brainstorming your own fiction podcast. So you will not fully write your own episode, but we do want you to consider what you would create if you had the assignment to produce a full episode of a fiction podcast. So think of it like a short story that you would want to tell over a podcast. So when you're doing this, you're going to consider the following items and respond about how you would plan and address each element. What kind of setting would your story have? You don't have to do something dystopian, but it's certainly a fun place to start. Dystopian science fiction is all over the place right now. That can include anything from machines and robots taking over the world to something like The Walking Dead with the zombie apocalypse. All of those things kind of fall into dystopian fiction. Again, you don't have to write about that, but it's a really fun and popular genre right now. What is the mood? What is the atmosphere of your piece? What emotions would listeners experience when they are listening to your podcast? What would your podcast feel like to the audience? And how does the setting and the background noise help create this? And for that, I want you to think about Limetown. That opening episode, there's sirens blaring. There's all kinds of newscasters talking over each other. It's a very chaotic scene that the creators and the directors built through layers of audio. So that's the atmosphere that they created. Characters, you should have at least two to have some form of conflict. List their names, their ages, and important details about them. At least two characters. And the big question is this, and this is the big thing that we're looking at. How would you get your audience interested in the first 60 seconds? What features will you use to help engage an audience? And why would this make them want to keep listening? So there's some review here about plot elements, remembering what is rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. And then what you're doing is you are writing a hook, some kind of catchy, suspenseful, funny, or otherwise opening to a text. In a podcast, you are grabbing the audience's attention. This is how you want to keep them engaged. There are some items here for you to think about as you're doing this, that the idea that a successful podcast engages the listener right from the start, that there are so many ways to do this. And so right now we are going to listen to a couple of different hooks. And so while we are listening to those hooks, I would like you to keep these items in mind. For each hook, ask yourself, okay, what's the setting? What is the mood? What's the atmosphere that is being built? How are they building the atmosphere? What characters are introduced immediately? So let's take a listen to these, and then I'll do a little check-in with you to see what you may have noticed. So the first one, The Ides of March, an Uprising to Save the Earth by Madeline Kloss.
Beware the Ides of March. A line from William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar questions whether the future should be dictated by fate or free will. On March 15, 2019, students across the world rose up and answered that question. No longer did they want to leave their future up to fate or the higher but not necessarily wiser power of adults. They wanted action. This uprising is known as the climate strike and was started on August 20th in 2018 by a 16-year-old girl named Greta Thunberg. Now nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, Greta began her protests alone on the steps of Swedish Parliament. March 29th marks her 22nd week of striking, and she now stands alongside tens of thousands of teens around the world who she has inspired.
Okay, so I'm going to pause it right there. So my question for my viewers at home and for my students here in class is, for the first minute of that podcast, I think for this one we can really look at mood. What is the atmosphere of the piece? What was the very first thing that we heard in that podcast? Anyone able to take a guess? The very, very first thing that we heard. So let's take a listen again. Okay, so what do we hear immediately when the podcast first begins? Chanting, as if during a demonstration, right? So this opens with chanting from a demonstration. It then goes into a quote from William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, "Beware the Ides of March." So if I'm analyzing the beginning of this podcast for atmosphere, then some of the things that I notice are there's chanting, there is some kind of a march or demonstration, and there's an allusion to a famous William Shakespeare play. One of Shakespeare's most politically charged plays that is all about a coup d'etat and the changing of a regime. It then goes into a discussion about the young people of America not trusting the adults to take care of the climate change crisis. So that's what we're looking at to examine mood and atmosphere. So that's our first one. Let's take a look at the next example of a hook. So it doesn't have to be fictional, any effective writing is going to have a very strong, effective hook. Okay, let's take a look at this one. The Best Picture That Never Was by Harrison Larner.
In early April 1985, George Plimpton introduced Sports Illustrated readers and Mets fans worldwide to the prospect who may change the fortunes of their franchise. This mystery man, Sid Finch, came from the Tibetan mountains, and fans wondered what made him so special. Said to have a windup reminiscent of both Goofy and Juan Marichal, armed with a hiking boot on his right foot and a 168-mile-an-hour fastball with perfect accuracy. He was set to make a mockery of the best pitchers of all time, like Nolan Ryan and his teammate Dwight Gooden. But there was two problems. One, Sid Finch did not want to be a part of the opulent lifestyle of Major League Baseball. He didn't care for the money, for the fame, none of that. Problem number two, Sid Finch doesn't exist. I'm Harrison, and you're listening to the Slice of Sports Podcast.
Okay, so very interesting opening here. You have kind of this mellow background noise, telling us kind of a biographical piece. And then there's this twist at the end. This person doesn't exist, and the music rises and swells. So what we're listening to initially, we're kind of thinking, oh, okay, it's going to be a mellow biography piece, and then it turns into a mystery. So that was at the beginning of the podcast, I might be thinking, okay, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to listen to it. And then that twist happens, and suddenly I am interested in listening to this. So that's another interesting technique that can be used to hook an audience. So let's take a look at this last one. Depression Memes and Me. Why I Stopped Looking at Depression Memes by Zuhira Ali.
I spend a lot of time on social media to keep up with my friends and family, but also to entertain myself. I scroll through my feed looking at cooking videos, dance practices, and cat videos. But what I find the most entertaining are the memes. Whenever I find one that I really love, I share it with my brother John. Here's one of my favorites from a compilation of students from his acting class from the 90s.
I don't need friends, they disappoint me.
Internet memes can be photos, phrases, or videos that people share online. But there's a whole other world of memes with the hashtag depression that can take on a whole new meaning.
We all die. You either kill yourself or get killed.
I have crippling depression.
I didn't think too much about these memes until I came across one about suicide. That's when I started questioning whether this was really a good way to deal with my depression. So I reached out to Dr. Erin Vogel, a postdoctoral fellow at UC San Francisco, and we looked at a few of these depression memes together. And then this one, which is a fashion and depression meme at the same time.
Yes. Yes, it is. Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so here we have a podcast very different than the previous two. It starts out with kind of this poppy, jazzy, funky kind of music, which is an interesting choice for a podcast that is dealing with depression. But at the same time, it completely makes sense because there's sort of this self-deprecating humor that is coming along with this young woman's podcast. Depression memes kind of indicates that we try to use humor to deal with our depression, that humor is a coping mechanism. So that's an interesting way of tying the mood to the subject of the podcast. So 3 very, very different ways to look at a hook. What I really want to stress to you is that we're not asking you to script an entire podcast. You're doing 1 minute of a hook. So your directions for the assignment is to type out exactly what will be heard by the audience. So that doesn't just include words. That also needs to include the background music that you choose, the names of the speakers or characters, and dialogue, which will be read, acted out during the recording phase. So you can absolutely refer back to the transcripts of Limetown to help you with this. In particular, episode 1, which is linked here again, where you can focus on the first 3 minutes and really notice the variety of speaking styles, the narrator, the interviewees, the news reporter. And like I had mentioned before, that building of chaos that the creators put together in that first episode. And then you have here a script where not only do you have the reporter's words, reports of violence erupted today in the research facility known as Limetown, but they're static. As the reporter speaks, sirens and helicopters can be heard in the background. In the background, voices speak over walkie-talkies. Leah Haddock begins her narration. The noises outside of Limetown have faded away, and we are listening to a recorded call from the town. So there's these layers of sound that help create that mood, that atmosphere. So then you have space here to start creating your own. And it does not have to be perfect. The big thing that I want to say is this, and I say this as a writing teacher, a theater teacher, a film teacher, an English teacher, all of those things. Perfection is the enemy of progress. We can't wait until we have the perfect thing to turn something in or decide that it's ready. Nothing is perfect the first time out the gate. Any good writer will tell you that. So we just have to give it a go and then learn from what we may have made mistakes on. Don't be afraid of mistakes. This is all a learning process. So you're going to type your hook script in the box below, taking up as much room as you need. It can be 3 pages if it needs to be. It can be 1 page if it needs to be. Being sure to consider the required elements and time frame from the directions. 60 seconds, that's all we need. And you'll even notice it says here, your recording should be anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. On Flipgrid, where you are going to put this recording, I've given you a 3-minute limit. So it doesn't have to go to 3 minutes, but it will stop at 3 minutes. So then what you'll be doing, now that your idea is cemented and your hook is written, it's time to bring the beginning of your podcast to life. You'll go to Flipgrid. You'll find the podcast hook recording, and you'll record your hook. This should be exactly what you have scripted from step 2. So this must include the background noise, music effects, so that you have those ready to play from your Chromebook, your phone, or another source. More than 1 character. So if you're completing the recording yourself, be sure to use distinguishable voices for each role, and a time length between 1 minute minimum, 3 minute maximum. So to add to the effects of this being an audio only medium, please cover your camera with a strip of paper or something to black out your screen. Your video should then only include your vocals and other relevant background music. Now, for people who really want to get fancy with this, you can absolutely do something on WeVideo where you can layer in different layers of audio, but that's not required. We can keep this simple, or if you're super excited about this and you just want to go for it, you can absolutely record it in something else. Just make sure that you upload it to Flipgrid. So if we go to Schoology for this week, under week 3, and I expand the Thursday folder, you'll see it says record your podcast hook today. You click on that, and it's going to have the link, the Flipgrid link to the podcast assignment. So if I click on that, making sure that I'm using my GUHSD account, I will see podcast hook recording. These instructions here are the same ones that are in our HyperDoc. You would click record a response. Cover the camera and record. So that is the major task to take care of between today and when all of this is due tomorrow night. So just like last week, you are done with the week 3 podcast lesson when you have submitted your completed document to my Schoology classroom. If you have questions, you can always contact me, send me an email, or you can watch this video again. Also, please don't forget that the grammar assignment for the week is also due tomorrow night. So for our Zoom today, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to sign off so that I can post this video for anyone learning from home. I cannot wait to hear what you come up with for your podcasts. I think I've mentioned on these and here in class how much I have really started to love podcasts. So I can't wait to hear what you come up with. Best of luck.